You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Parker Ranger, Locked On Coogs here, and I mentioned that baseball is heading into an important weekend, and I felt like that was important enough to bring up for baseball folks. I've been loosely following baseball on my own this season. Decided it's time to see if folks want to follow it along with me as they head into what's, again, an important series this weekend. Now, Houston baseball's not had a great season by any stretch. 7-13 in conference, a game and a half up on the 12 seed, which is important because the top 12 out of 14 baseball programs in the conference make the conference tournament. So if you start getting that 12 seed or beneath it, you got a problem, especially when there are two teams tied at that 12 seed, being BYU and UCF. You're only a game and a half up on them. BYU's three Big 12 series they have left are Kansas State, Kansas, and Texas Tech. We'll get to that in a second. Central Florida has Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and Baylor. Houston has they have Utah this weekend. And then I believe it's Arizona State and then Arizona. They play the Arizona schools to wrap up Big 12 play as far as their Big 12 series go. BYU, I think, has a similar difficulty schedule in terms of quality of opponents. However, they've got two of the three series at home where Houston's on the road, right, for two of the three. UCF has the much easier schedule out down the stretch in these Big 12 series. And so suddenly you're seeing that 11, 12 seed spot kind of slowly slip away, and you could ultimately miss the Big 12 tournament. Now, if you were to get into that tournament at the present record as they stand, you'd have to end up playing Arizona theoretically again in a first-round matchup after having just played them in the last 2 weeks of the season. Theoretically beating them, you'd have to have beat them, I think, 2 out of 3 times the weekend. Can you beat them 3 out of 4 times to move on? I get the complications there and why people be skeptical about even getting out of the first round. Does it even matter? I kind of think it does. We'll talk about that in later in the second segment and into the third segment as well. But the deal here is that you're really looking at like kind of an uphill battle out of the Oklahoma State series where you canceled a game and lost one in embarrassing fashion, which will come up throughout this last 2 segments of the show. It kind of makes this weekend a must-have weekend. Frankly, just 2 out of 3 versus Utah is barely acceptable. You kind of need to sweep them, and that's really been hard for the Houston Cougar program to do. But really, Utah's at the bottom of the conference, and it's kind of your last chance to get the feel-good conference series win. You haven't won. You've only won 2 of the 6 conference series. 2 of the 7 conference series so far. Things have not been great in terms of winning the series, and I think to ultimately make it into that 12th spot between the advantages BYU and Central Florida have in the final push here, you're gonna have to win the series at least against Utah, and I think you have to sweep it because getting more than a game off of Arizona State and Arizona feels like a long shot right now. Houston just hadn't had defensive games. They've given up a lot of runs. They're fun to watch. Outfielder Xavier Perez has been fantastic individually. He's got over 300 average. He's got OPS of 921. He's really swinging the bat well. Clyde Climie is playing every day at third base, 9 homers, 914 OPS. They've got some bats if they can keep the games low scoring, but they haven't proven able to do that, which kind of ultimately become their own downfall across here. Now, that's all in Big 12 play, and you hope to kind of make a run in the Big 12 tournament because you're going to need to win that Big 12 tournament, make a play at getting into any actual postseason action after that. And that all may seem far-fetched and not important, but it's been a while since this program had anything like that. And that's obviously, again, I tend to be optimistic in terms of wins and losses. I tend to think that the football team should win 8 to 10 games next season, which is a high-end thing, but I look at the schedule, I think it's familiar, it's friendly and all of that. even the optimist that I am does not think the baseball team is going to win the Big 12 Conference tournament. But weird things happen, and I dang sure want a chance, right? Like I want to get into the first round. They're playing at the ballpark in Arlington. I forget what the new one's called. Is the new one Globe Life? It's where the Rangers play in Arlington. I believe the new one's called Globe Life. Anyway, they're playing. It's an indoor deal. I think the kind of thing where they've got some guys with some bats and that they can get hot pitching. Sometimes it's better to be hot than actually good. I think that there's a push they can make there, and ultimately, I think they kind of almost have to if Todd Whitting wants to save his job. Todd Whitting's been around a long time. He is a Houston Cougar through and through in many ways, but it feels like that time may be ultimately coming to a close. So I want to talk about why that is in the third and final segment and what might be a little bit longer segment. So we're going to move over to that and talk about why Todd Whitting's got to win this weekend and win in the Big 12 tournament to have a shot to keep his job. But first, I mentioned at the top here that today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Now, if you ever check your bank account, you wonder where did the money go between dining, eating out, shopping, Final Four swag, whatever. There's Monarch Money to help you keep from losing track. It's your personal CFO, full visibility control over all your finances, but it's not just a budgeting app. Monarch Money is a complete financial command center. Track all your accounts, investments, spending in one place, just one place. Stop managing your money. Start building wealth with a single app and dashboard. I like how simple that single place is. I teach, I coach, I podcast, I spend money on stupid stuff like the sneakers on the wall behind me. I've got a lot of different things going on. Monarch Money helps me keep control of all of it, and probably the most adult way I physically could. So take control of your finances, Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right, Park Ranger, Locked On Coogs here, and we've been talking about baseball in the second segment. Now, Houston kind of sort of needed to sweep this weekend against Utah to really put themselves in a good spot for the Big 12 tournament, to really put themselves in a good spot to ultimately just make a run in that tournament and keep Todd Whitting's job. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say you got to want him to keep his job or not. If they don't make the Big 12 tournament for a second year in a row, I don't know how he could. Last year, Houston was 7-21 in conference, finished 12th, but there was a different number of teams in the conference. The conference tournament looked a little bit different. Yes, this year it looks like they got a real shot at being in the tournament, the Big 12 tournament that is, but it is a little bit more. It's an expanded field. They went up to 12 because there are 14 baseball programs in the conference now, and I just don't think he can miss it again. Under Whitting, the program's kind of been in a roller coaster the last decade. In 2023, last half decade, I should say, 2023, great year in American Athletic Conference play. 2021, 7-21, 1934 overall, right? Houston has not been to the NCAA postseason since 2018, which why in the second segment I was talking some about, like, it'd be great to finally get back to that, but they're just too far away right now unless they got really hot and made a gigantic run. And to be fair, all of that makes people upset. Todd Whitting, to be fair, in 2018 was the American Athletic Conference Coach of the Year and did some really great things. The fact that the program has not been able to build on that success or any of the success before it and has kind of been in a downward slide since makes people upset because there's so much good baseball being played within 90 minutes of the greater Houston area. It doesn't make sense that Houston does not have a respectable baseball program in a lot of ways. It's got, again, talented players. It's produced talented players. It's the win-loss column the last half decade that has people really upset. And ultimately, it leaves people perplexed as to how he got an extension in 2023 when they went 17-6 in American Athletic Conference play. cool. That was enough to get him an extension through the end of the 2026 season. So after this year, Whitting will have a year left on his deal. The buyout is not crazy complicated. I believe it's 40% of the contract would be due back to him for the final year of the contract would be due back to him if they wanted to buy him out. That's not anything that they could not do if they wanted to get rid of him this summer. The full share, the $40 million rev share for the Big 12 is coming in 2026. I think you're going to start seeing Houston make some moves, both because athletic directors New and Eddie Nunez, but also because you're going to start seeing them make moves as if they're making that 40, because you're going to have to start, you're going to be able to start paying checks with that 40 in the 2026, 2027 school year. So you can kind of start to move into that world. You can kind of schedule your books in that kind of way, right? And I think that because of that, almost because Houston's going to have the money to buy him out, and because there's going to be a lot smaller buyout this summer than there was last summer, Whitting's job is in jeopardy if they don't make some noise in the Big 12 Conference tournament. And again, it doesn't seem like very likely that they do, but I kind of think that he's got to. The big deal, though, is that it might not matter. And it might not matter because, again, they've had a couple down years in a row. 2023 aside, when they went, like I said, 17-6 in the American Athletic Conference play, they're no longer an American Athletic Conference team. So then you got to kind of judge that or by a different set of standards. The cherry on top for this year was the Oklahoma State debacle, and we didn't talk about it at the time. Baseball, frankly, don't get a whole lot of interaction from people on baseball on this podcast, and so we didn't go into it too much on Monday's episode after this happened on a Sunday. But Houston played a 3-day series, Oklahoma State. They won the Friday game. Good win. Saturday gets canceled because of weather. And Houston, feels like should have felt like they're in a good spot going into Sunday. And then 4 innings in, Houston is down 9-1. And they're pushing it. And frankly, it's in the 3 o'clock hour. The game is going to be over by 4:05. Because Houston's got to make the travel curfew to get their flights and so on, right? And so the only rule at that point is that Oklahoma State's got to get 5 innings of a game in for it to count as a game, and then the travel curfew can kick in and Houston leaves, right? And Houston is down 9-1. Like, it's no doubt they're getting their butt kicked. The game, for all intents and purposes, should have counted as a loss. Ultimately, it did. But the maneuvering Houston and Coach Todd Whitting were pulling to try and get out without that loss were embarrassing. I don't know how else to say it. If you did not watch it, I'd go through it right fast. As the game was winding down, late 3 o'clock hour, that 4:05 time was like so crucial. I had to look at to make sure I knew the time of day exactly. It's 4:05. They had to get the 5th inning done with by 4:05. To ultimately count the game. And as the 3 o'clock hour is winding down, you've got Whitting questioning calls and going on the field, getting in animated antics and disputes and, all that kind of stuff with umpire to try and prolong the game. He's got players losing bats as they're swinging and stuff like, I got to pick up my bat now, trying to delay that 3rd and final out of the inning as long as possible. Ultimately, Whitting goes out in the field and throws a fit and gets tossed, but then he takes comically long to go back and get his bag and get his stuff, and he walks the whole warning track to get off the field and walks super slow because they can't go back to play until he's off of the field. The play-by-play guys called it Bush League. The fans in Stillwater were booing him. It was all super embarrassing. It's the kind of thing that old school fans that think about playing the game with an honorable kind of decor couldn't believe he did it. Fans that are more new school and win it all at any cost or whatever were you shouldn't have been down 9-1 to a team you beat on Friday. There all kinds of emotions from all kinds of people about it, but none of them were good. It was bad. It was not a good look for Whitting or the baseball program. And even after he got off the field, you had the Houston Cougar batter loses their bat. They call a timeout to kind of talk things over, and they ultimately, the umpires give both dugouts a warning about how they're playing or whatever. And ultimately, the inning did finish. They finished the Houston side, and then it was Houston's turn to pitch with Oklahoma State up by 8 runs. I almost said 8 runs, 9-1. And Houston hadn't warmed up a pitcher. They were so clearly trying to stall. They hadn't even gone through the process of getting someone's arm loosened up to go play the bottom half of the inning because they were trying that hard and that focused on not having to play it. Ultimately, the umpires called the game there, called it good because the score was what it was, and called the 5th inning done. Game was over. Win goes to Oklahoma State, as it should have been, right? And it's just kind of this singular moment in the last month where people were like, why do we have this guy? We're not winning games. We're not getting good Houston, and we're getting good Houston area talent, but we can't seem to put it all together and make a good Houston area baseball team. We're throwing temper tantrums, throwing fits. What are we doing with this program, right? Just all bad. And now that program, if they don't have a really good weekend this weekend, is in real jeopardy of missing the conference baseball tournament altogether. And I don't know if you care more about wins and losses or what the program looks like or keeping Houston area kids in town or whatever. But if they don't win this weekend, and Todd Whitting hasn't done any of those things, and if Todd Whitting isn't doing any of those things, I think you got to look at moving on. Now, there were all kinds of talks about who it could be if they were to move on from Whitting back before he got his extension. We'll wrestle with that if and when it happens. So every day is here. I want to talk baseball. Stay tuned in and keep these kind of things, comments going, and we'll keep talking about bats and balls and all of that. I hope, again, for the sake of entertainment, I'd like to see them, frankly, beat the Arizona schools, get into the Big 12 tournament, make some noise, right? Have some fun with the whole thing. When baseball is going your way, it's a lot of fun. And so I'm here for it. I think it'd be awesome to see that happen. But for now, it has not been. And so we'll be following it this weekend. If news is made and needs to be discussed, we'll be talking about it at Locked On Coogs. So hit subscribe, hit the bell, so you know we're live for the latest in the Houston Cougars each and every day. Every second listen of the day. Locked On College Basketball, Locked On Big 12, covering all things in college basketball and all things in the Big 12. We also got a Big 12 squad coming out later today, so check that out while you're surfing podcast. Locked On Coogs, primarily Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Go Cougs.